Hey guys, this is Jonathan from Cajun Gun Works. Today we're going to be doing a disassembly video of the CZ SP01 with the manual safety. It's been long overdue to do a Sear cage video, disassembly, reassembly videos for everybody. So we're going to go ahead and do that and get started here with the overhead camera view and teach y'all all the tips and tricks that we know as the gunsmiths here at CGW. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and get started on this disassembly here. So this is the CZ SP01 with the manual safety. This is going to apply to any of our guns with the manual safety for the most part. The Sear cage will be different in a shadow, but we will eventually get around to getting those knocked out. So to get started here, you can take your screwdriver here. We're going to take off our grips first. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to punch out this little tab right here. Now, I use a short 1/8 roll pin punch there that we've cut down here. I'll go ahead, you take this tab out. Now, a new in-box gun will have this tab right here will be curled. Whenever you pull out that top pin right there, all you have to do is just pull this thing out. It'll be difficult to pull out, but if you're working on your guns yourself, what we recommend is you take some pliers and you just grab it on that tab right there and you bend it back and forth until that metal breaks off, because it really doesn't serve any purpose. All that it does is just make sure that this stays inside of there, but it does that even with a small little tab on there like that. I'll go ahead and put that and that pin off to the side there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take out the hammer spring, okay? And to do that, I like to put my hand on top of the gun here like this. I like to take the same punch, and you're pushing this lanyard loop into the table to relieve that pressure, okay? And all that you're doing is just pushing it right out there, okay? Pull out your punch, your hammer spring, and lanyard loop will pull out there. Then you have that pin as well. And now you'll see you have obviously no tension because the hammer spring's out, right? Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off the slide here. Okay, rubber end of a mallet, pull back, line up those lines, pull out that takedown lever or slide stop, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead now and put that slide all the way off to the side, okay? Because the next thing we're going to get into is the actual internal components of the frame, because I know that is what most people struggle with these guns on the disassembly and the reassembly, okay? So the first thing that we like to do, or that I like to do specifically, I like to take a pick here, okay, just a dental pick, and I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to spin that over the side, just a little bit, not much, okay? Now I'm going to take this little short 1/8 punch again, okay, and I'm just going to come right there in front of that in front of the safety lever on the Sear, and literally just pry it over a little bit, and then from there I'll be able to pull it right on out, just walk it out, just like that, okay. Go ahead and put that off to the side, and now you can push down and forward with the Sear cage, and you can pull the entire thing out, okay. The next thing, if you're just sitting here and you want to do it, you can push down the trigger bar here, rotate this up, and you can pull out the other side of the safety there. And you'll notice that tab right there is already coming out. So I'm going to take my tweezers here, I'm going to grab it, just pull it out, okay? Put that off to the side. And I'm going to go ahead and get the other side as well. And the way that I like to do that is I'll just put it down here on the side here and just cover my hand, push it down. Okay, see how it flopped on my hand there? Okay, take that tab, put the safeties and all the other parts accordingly over there. All right, and now you can take out the hammer, strut, and disconnector, okay? And to do that, you gotta take out this little pin right here. And what I like to do is I'll flip it upside down. I'll take my pick here and be nice and careful not to scratch the frame, like that, but I'll just lead it right through the hole. It doesn't take any pressure, tension, or anything like that. If it does have pressure and tension when you're trying to push that little pin out, it's probably because you forgot to take this out. Because how those ride in there, this will sometimes interfere. The spring will get in the way of this pin. You can push it out with that spring in there, but it's not as easy, and it's not like that. It doesn't just glide out. From there, now I'll take the gun, flip it on the other side, grab my little punch again, And I'll just punch out the actual hammer pin itself. And now you have the entire hammer, strut assembly, and disconnector, right? Okay, and now the only things that are left in the gun really is the trigger bar and the trigger. So this is the way I like to do it. We use rolls of tape like this all the time. It's a great way to not scratch up your gun. It's also a very useful tool here. So what I like to do is I like to look at this pin here, and whatever side is most recessed, okay, so this side's most recessed, is the way that I will punch it out, okay? And that's especially needed on these stock pins, okay? So I'll get the longer punch here, okay, still 1/8. Now I'm just get it started. I'll take my mallet here, and I'll just tap it all the way through, okay? And now if you know anything about little springs, like that trigger return spring in there, if it can fly out and go anywhere, it's going to, okay? And I have seen them fly out of this freaking magazine well a million times, okay? So I'll put my fingers through the mag well like that and slowly pull out that punch, and it'll pop out. You won't believe it, it just slapped me in the finger there. If you've ever done this by yourself with no instructions, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? And now to take out the trigger bar and the trigger, you push up the trigger from the frame there, and you pull out the entire assembly. Now, this gun is absolutely disgusting. I know this was the last Sunday gun day video. Oh, gun here, and it has not been cleaned since, if you cannot tell. So I'll just wipe it off a little bit on the mat there. Now, from here, we'll go ahead and go on to the slide, okay? And the slide, just like most guns, you push down the recoil spring with the guide rod, pull out that and the recoil spring, push the barrel in, pull it out, okay? And that is really it. That is most of the gun there. But I will go ahead and show you taking apart the actual slide assembly itself with the firing pin block plunger. So what we do for that is I'll take a bigger punch here, okay, whatever side is most recessed. If you buy a gun from us, we typically center them and re-blue them as well. So though both sides will be a little bit recessed, I'll take the middle end of the mallet here, and I'm gonna give it some firm taps. Okay, so you lose that tension there. And then what I like to do is, because this firing pin is underneath spring tension, I'm gonna turn it upside down and pull it. And you'll see most of the time it won't go out because the firing pin block plunger catches that groove. To pull out the firing pin from here, you push in on the detent on that plunger there, and there's your firing pin, okay? And now from here, this firing pin block plunger will just come right out. And I'll just take that roll of tape right there and just tap it out, okay? So now if you ordered our kit or anything like that, like the short reset system, you can take out the firing pin, whatever, and put it back in. But this is basically the entire disassembly of these guns. The trigger bar support spring's still in there, and the magazine release is still in there. And if you'd like a specific video on those, let us know in the comments and we can get that taken care of. Now this is the moment I know you've all been waiting for, is the decocker. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to actually just go ahead and disassemble it and then reassemble it all in the same go, so you can get a good idea of, you know, how everything works and the best ways to, you know, take it apart and also put it back together. So in the manual safeties, you basically have this Sear pin here that actually can fit inside the frame without having to drive it through like on the T-cocker models. And we will make a video on the T-cocker next, because we know that is definitely the most difficult Sear cage. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take that 1/8 punch again, and you want to push straight through, okay? You want to take that Sear pin, put it off the side, okay? Now what I like to do is take my middle finger and my thumb and clamp over everything, okay? Because there's the L spring right there, okay? And then the rest of the parts fall out, okay? So this is it right here, right? So for the manual safety Sear cages, okay, you have the Sear cage itself. This is our ASB. This is our adjustable Sear. This is how we set our safeties when we custom tune the pistols and everything else. And then this is our lifter here. And then we use the same stock Sear spring It is absolutely adequate. There's no need to ever adjust the Sear spring tension. That's unsafe in our professional opinions. So this is the way that I like to start the manual safety guns, okay? I like to turn it around, okay? So this is forward facing. If the gun was facing this way, you know, this is how it'd be facing. I like to turn it towards the back, okay? Where the long leg is down, okay? And I like to start the Sear pin here, okay? I get it about right there, you know, not very much sticking out, okay? And I take this L spring, and this is what a lot of people struggle with. I pinch it with 2 fingers. There's a little ledge right here, okay? And the other leg of the L spring is gonna ride right here, okay? So you basically are trying to wedge these 2 legs right here. And a lot of people overcomplicate this, but I do not think it needs to be overcomplicated, okay? I pinch it with 2 fingers here. I put tension in that corner. I ride it in the corner. And then with my support fingers down here, I pinch it there, okay? And now I'll take my pick. I'll just glide it onto the spring, onto the pin there, okay? And you need to keep this leg up here above this, okay? Because if it drops below that, you're not gonna be able to, when you get your lifter on there, you're not going to be able to wrap that leg where it needs to be at, okay? So you can see this is how you know if you're doing it right, okay? Leg up there, leg over here, all right? And the next thing you need to do is take this lifter, okay? I'm gonna push that pin out just a little bit further. I'm gonna take this lifter, okay? And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a gap in between the wall of the Sear cage and the lifter here, okay? And now you can see that spring leg is in between the 2, okay? I'm gonna take my pick here and I'm going to run that leg of that Sear, or that L spring into the side of the lifter there, okay? And now this is the easiest part that I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different ways. They try to pick it and they try to do a lot of other things. Get yourself a roll pin punch, okay? Come up through the bottom and literally just catch that leg of it, and boop, it's on there. That's all you have to do for that. And when you're done with that, push it all over the side, okay? That's it. Okay, and you can check it for tension, okay? That's all you gotta do for that L spring, that lifter there, okay? So now I'm gonna walk this pin until it is flush with that lifter, okay? And you gotta be careful, because you know, if you hit that lifter, everything's gonna come off, and you're gonna have to redo everything you just did. With our ASB here, okay, you're gonna come up. Like I said, it's gonna be flush because we have very good tolerances on our ASBs and our lifters inside the Sear cage, okay? You're gonna come up from the bottom on it, you're just gonna push it up like I just did. Very simple, okay? And once you get it up there, you're just gonna run that pin through, okay? Just through that leg, so now everything is retained, okay? And now you're gonna take this and you're gonna put it on the bench or mat or whatever you're using, okay? And now you have the Sear spring itself, okay? To set the Sear spring, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put it in the gap with the long leg inside of that slot and the short leg facing the rear, okay? Now these right here are miracles, okay? It's just a wooden dowel. You can take a shish kebab stick from your local Brookshire's, Walmart, Costco, whatever, and you just cut the sharp tips off of it. This is an amazing tool for gunsmithing, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put this on the table, and why I'm putting it on the table is so that the Sear itself cannot move further down than the table, okay? It's gonna keep it in the right position. So what I'm gonna do, get the long leg there, short leg right there. I'm gonna push down just enough where I can take my thumb here and push that pin where it catches it, okay? If it just catches one little rung just like that spring, then I'm all good. You don't want to push it too far in because you don't want that little leg. You want that little leg right there to stay in the right position, okay? You don't want it to drop under because then it loses tension, right? But if I can get that just to catch that one little rung of that spring, I can take my mallet with the rubber in here and just give it a little tap. And now that pin has ran through the entire ASB, and it has ran through that spring, and you can see it's all captured, okay? And now you can come to the side here and you can pull the ASB where you need it, then push that pin until it is flush on both sides. And now to check to make sure that you did everything right, okay, what you want to do is you want to get your fingernail, lift up the lifter, not a bunch, and just see if it'll come back down. Okay, does it move freely? All right, and then the sear, make sure it has good tension on it, and make sure there's no take up before. Like, you don't want to trigger if it has like some loose take up, it then hits almost a wall before it has tension. Okay, you don't want any of that on your sear. You want your sear to have nice and good tension, and this one does. Alrighty guys, so once you get the sear cage back together, now we're gonna go ahead and assemble the rest of the gun itself, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is work with the trigger bar and the trigger here, okay? And you're gonna have this trigger return spring captured, enslaved in here before you put it into the gun. That way you're not sitting there trying to line up the holes and run the spring through the ears and everything else at the same time. That just makes it a whole mess. So what you want to slave it with, if you buy our Pro package online, then you're going to get your own slave pin that is made for this, okay? But if you don't have that and you're just working on the gun by yourself with no other parts in the slave pin or anything, you can take either a toothpick and cut it to the right size, that's as wide as these ears right here, or you can take this number 19 pin that stops the actual pivot pin from walking out on you when the gun is assembled, okay? And it's the shortest pin here. So I'll actually show you the difference between that pin and an H pin, because a lot of people get those confused, okay? An H pin, you can see that there is slightly longer than the number 19 pin, okay? And that will play a factor whenever we put that number 19 pin back in, okay? But until then, we're just gonna take this trigger return spring with the short leg behind the trigger, the front leg in front of it, with the long leg in front of it. Okay, take this 19 pin, you're gonna run it through the ears, okay? And because it's not as wide as the ears, you wanna take a punch and you wanna try to kind of center it between the ears there. You see I went a little too far, so I'm just gonna kind of center it there. All right, so that way it just doesn't fly out on you when you're working with it, okay? And you're gonna take the trigger bar there and you're gonna put that in. I'm gonna show you guys the lubrication points first, all right? So the first big lubrication point is where the ears of the trigger go right there, okay? Right there. And then you wanna run where the actual trigger bar itself runs, okay? Just like that, on both sides. And then that little square in the frame, that's where the disconnector has a lot of friction, a lot of contact, okay? And you also wanna go on the sides where the hammer rides, okay? Then where that little hole is for that 19 pin that we talked about, you want to put a little drop right halfway in the hole and halfway out of the hole. So you're getting a little bit of oil in there, and that's going to help retain that pin, okay? And now take the trigger here, and you would run it back through there, okay? And then with there's a technique to this to actually hold this trigger in place where you can line up that hole and run that pin through, okay? I take my index finger and I run it on top of the trigger bar right here, okay? And my middle finger, I pull the trigger all the way to the rear, okay? Now I'll typically put that little leg in that slot, but if you need to, you can push it over with your finger. Okay, so now the hole should be pretty close to line up, and if you need it's pretty close to being lined up. So if you want to adjust it, you can. And then you want to take your floating trigger pin. If you have a stock trigger pin, this is not going to work. This technique it's rough with the normal trigger pin because it's a roll pin that it's almost expanded on the sides and it's almost impossible to drive back in the gun. So our floating trigger pin here, we'll start it, okay? And you want to wiggle around and push on it until you hear a click, okay? And when you hear that click, you're gonna put it back down on the table, rubber end of your mallet, and give it a good tap, okay? You put it in that roll of tape there, and now you can take the wooden dowel, that magic wooden stick I've told you about so many times, and put it on there and just give it a little tap, okay? Then the little number 19 pin's gonna come out, and that trigger pin should be flush. If it's not flush on both sides or it's not centered on both sides, just give it a little push until it is. You want that pin nice and centered, decrease chance of walking, okay? And now what you want to do is you want to put in your strut assembly here with your hammer and your disconnector, okay? And for here, what I like to do is I'll put a little lube just 2 dots right there on both the pins. I'll wiggle it around a little bit. 2 dots on both the pins. Wiggle it around a little bit. Okay. And now I'll take this, you drop that in there, okay? And to hold it in place, you want to line up the holes there, okay? And once you line up the holes, you want to take your finger down here and you want to push that hammer strut in against the wall and it'll hold it in place. Then you can run that pivot pin in, take your wooden dowel, push it in until it's past flush, and then you can drive it all the way with the pick. Or with the pick, a punch, whatever. But we run it in there with that wooden dowel just to make sure you're not scratching anywhere around that gun. And now what you want to do is you want to take that little 19 pin, push down the disconnector, you want to drop it down in that little hole, okay? It falls down like that, and it just doesn't go in right, that's fine. Get your tweezers, get it out. Or if you're bad like me, then you gotta tap it out. Okay, you're just gonna kind of drop it in there until it starts going that hole. And once it starts, you wanna get that wooden dowel again, just push it on down in there until it's flush. Now, this is where the H pin difference between the 19 pin and the H pin matters a lot. If you accidentally put an H pin in here, it will not seat flush and that sear cage will not go in the gun, okay? And if you lose your 19 pin, you can take an H pin and file it down and machine it down to where it'll stay flush in there, but then you have to have another H pin for your trigger or hammer or whatever. Okay, and now from here, you want to go ahead and put in those little bitty annoying safety tabs you got on the sides. And I like to start with the one with the spring on it, okay? And that's because whenever you put it in here, it's kind of retained, and the other side is typically not retained. There are models that have springs on it, and it's identical to this on both sides. Then it doesn't matter what side you start with. But if you have the typical manual safety gun, you want to start with the side with the spring, okay? And you want to roll it a little bit in your fingers when you're putting it in there. The little spring goes into a little dimple in the back of that frame there. You'll put the spring in there and push it, and you see it start to roll on me. So I'm gonna tilt it back a little bit and then just push it back and in, okay? And that should just go right in just like that. That'd be nice and retained. Okay, and now you want to flip over to the other side there. You want to push that hammer up so that disconnector's out of the way. And now you want to take this other piece and just drop it right on in. Okay, that one should go in easier. It doesn't have a spring. There's not as much messing around with it. Okay, and now from here, you can put in your sear cage. Okay, and you want to put the hammer up. You want to put the sear cage down in there as far back as it'll go, then push down and back. Okay, and you'll feel it just kind of shift into position there. All right, and now what you want to do, you want to get the right side safety, the right side of the gun like this. The right side safety you want to put in now. And you'll see that little tab in there. You want to get your wooden dowel and push it over as far as it'll go. Okay. You want to take this, you want to put it up 90-degree angle, so straight up until it clicks, and then rotate it over. If it has a little resistance, that's just fine. As long as it clicks in, you had it flush, and then you try to rotate it, then it's just fine, even if it has some good tension on there. And the next thing you want to do is you want to run in the other side of the safety, okay, the actual safety bar itself. And you want to put it in that hole. You want to put it in that hole, and you need to kind of put a finger on the sear cage to make sure it doesn't roll out. And there's a little flat edge right here, okay, and that flat edge can roll underneath the leg of the sear spring, which is right there. So what you want to do is you want to take it and you kind of rock it back and forth a little bit until it catches, and then it'll push until it goes in and locks in with the other side. But it's not all the way in yet, okay? When you get to this point, that little spring-loaded tab you had in there, you need to pull it back with a pick, okay? You get inside those grooves right there, pull it back all the way, and then pinch with your middle finger and your thumb there. And that'll put it into place. You're not done yet. You need to run that sear leg and put it into that little groove on that safety bar, okay? And now your safety should be nice and clicky. Everything should work just fine. You should be able to put pressure on the back of the hammer and simulate if you had a hammer spring in there, and everything should work. Single action, double action, it should all work, okay? And now from here, you're almost done with the frame. Now you want to take your hammer spring and run it through the bottom here, okay? Then take your lanyard loop and run that through the bottom. So now you're gonna actually have to look at these pins here. So there's a thicker pin, which is this one right here, and a thinner pin. Okay, the thicker pin is going to retain down here at the bottom. That's gonna retain the hammer pin down there. And then this little one is gonna hold in this tab that prevents the magazine from smashing into that hammer spring, okay? So you wanna line up this gap right here with this hole. And you wanna have the solid of this right here, the lanyard loop, facing back, okay? And you wanna push it down until you got it at the right spot. And you can play with it some and run that spring, well, that pin right on through there, okay? And now at this point, you should have spring tension, everything should work. You can check your reset, everything right there, okay? Now from here, you take this piece right here, and you want to take that tab, you want to run it right in the middle down there, okay? And you take this pin, and you're going to put it right through that hole, and you want it to go through the tab on your, you don't want to push this tab back and then run that pin in. You'll bend up that tab, and then your magazines aren't going to go in as easy. So you're going to push it back till the hole's lined up, and you want to try to start with your hands. If you can get it started with your hands, it's great. And you want to take the rubber in your mallet, just tap it until it's flush. Okay. Now that tab's in there, all right? And then from there, the only thing you got left on the frame is your grips. So on your grips here, especially the rubber ones, you want to put it flat on the gun, just like this, and then run it forward, okay? And I'm holding that forward tension to make sure that it seats properly, because you got a little lip on the plastics, on the lock grips, on Patriot Defense grips, whatever grips you're using. And you want to pull it forward. Get on that screw there, and you'll feel the screw drop into the hole. Then you want to screw it all the way down. Put good downward pressure on it, especially if you have a Phillips head screw, because it will strip, okay? Just like any other screw will, you have to be really cautious with these and make sure that it's getting good enough tension where it's not going to start stripping the screw, okay? Same thing on the other side here. Nice and tight, okay? And now your frame's complete, okay? So now we're gonna put that off to the side. Now we're gonna go up here to the slide. Now to start the slide, you're gonna wanna first start your actual firing pin retaining pin, all right? It does not matter what side you start it on, but you do need to start it before you start working with the other things, okay? So what I like to do is I get it in there, just with my fingers there, where I can get it in a good spot, and I give it one good tap. Now that may have went too far. All right, if it goes too far, then you're not gonna be able to get the firing pin in. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna take the bigger roll punch here. I'm gonna get on there. Just gonna tap it back just a little bit, right? Where it's still started nice, okay? But I have plenty of clearance in there. The next thing that needs to go in there is gonna be your firing pin block plunger, all right? What you're gonna do is with the flat surface facing the inside of the gun, you know, facing where the firing pin is gonna be riding, you're gonna put it right on in there. And you're gonna push it in as far as you can with your fingers. And then with the flats facing upward, facing like this, okay, you're gonna put the firing pin in the gun. And you can check it up here, spin it around if you need to, make sure that it's nice and flat up top. And you wanna push that firing pin past flush, okay? Not crazy far past it, but enough past it where this pin can go through one of those grooves there. And then I take my thumb and I put it on the side of the gun to brace, and I put the slide down into the table so I have a nice, good, sturdy structure. And I take this hammer here, and I tap that pin in as far as I can, okay? And then I'll put it back on the table. As far as I can get it down with this hammer, that's the further the better with the hammer, okay? Because it is a roll pin, right? And that retaining pin, if you start it way too early with the actually punching it with the punch, you have the chance of it flaring out, and then it's not going to go in the gun, and it's going to be funky and everything else. So now you just want to take your bigger punch there, and you want to get it in there, all right? And what you want to do is you want to center both sides, make sure it's nice and centered, okay? And do a little function test at this point to make sure you did it right. You can take this wooden dowel and push down on the back of the firing pin and push in that plunger. And if it drops when you push in that plunger, then you did it right, okay? Just like that. And now from here, all you gotta do is drop the barrel in. Take your guide rod and recoil spring, run that in. Now your slide's done. Now you can take your frame here, another lubrication point, and you'll run it all across the rail in here, okay? Not a whole lot, just a little bit across the entire thing. Take your slide, put it on, pull it back until those lines line up. Take your slide stop, start it until it goes in that far, and give it a good tap. And now you can do a function test, make sure your single action works, double action works, safety works. Make sure that the gun resets. And there you go. Your gun is built and completed. So guys, that's the video here. The CZ SP01 with the manual safety, the complete disassembly and reassembly. I know you guys have a lot of questions. Leave them in the comments below. And also let us know what guns you'd like to see in the future. You know, we have our Jerichos, the Decocker models, the Shadows. The list goes on and on and on. So then those videos are going to come out. We're going to do more videos on different things, specific things like setting H pins and, you know, all the good stuff, and setting the trigger pins. There's a whole lot of little, you know, niche things with these guns that there's not a lot of content, or good content anyways, out there on YouTube to, you know, be able to figure it out yourself. So we're going to go ahead, guys, and help you all out there with that. Let us know what else you'd like to see. And thank you, guys.